good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're gonna be seeing the video. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Whitney here. I am not a lecturer, I'm just a student who also had difficulties with quantity surveying N4, but now I can see here and there, yes. So I will allow corrections as well because I'm still learning. However, I also want to help those who do not see the light, especially when it comes to module 4 of measurements. So we're going to be starting here because this is a module, or this is a chapter that has more marks, which is about 40 marks in your final examination. So yes, this is going to help you if you need help to have a clear vision of what to expect. So in quantity surveying module 4 of measurements, we have measurements of foundation, which is also known as a substructure, the superstructure, the roof, plane opening, window, door. What else am I leaving? Okay, I think that's it. You have to know all of those things by heart because you do not know which one the examiner might choose on your final examination. So you have to know everything. So as you can see, the first thing that you have to know when you're measuring, it is a checklist. A checklist is also known as a measuring list. So in simple terms, a checklist is a list of things that we are going to measure. So out of all the measurements that you have to know, you also have to know the checklist as well, because it is essential for you to firstly write a checklist before you take off. However, even if you would however when you are not told to write it, I think you're not supposed to write it. You're supposed to follow the instructions that you're going to get. So yeah, on today's topic we're gonna focus on measuring foundations, and we're going to start with the checklist of foundations. Okay, here's how your checklist would look. You will start with site clearance. This is clearing the site. You will come to excavations, risk of collapse, risk of water, concrete footing, brick wall, backfill, cutaway, hardcore, DPC, and facings. Facings, which is also known as the extra over ordinary brick, if I'm not mistaken. So what you need to know on everything here, you need to know the units of measurement, which are going to be like this. Okay, site clearance, it will be meters squared. Excavations will be meters cubed. Risk of collapse will be meters squared. Risk of water will be item. I don't actually remember the reason for item, but it was said that for water, because you cannot actually measure how much water will be in a trench, that's when we have to identify it as item. Okay, our concrete footing will be meters cubed. As you can see, everything going downwards, right? You can write it down, you can take a screenshot, whatever that works for you. So here's what you have to do. When you write a checklist, you do not just write site clearance and then from site clearance you come to cutaway, from cutaway you come to concrete, from concrete to hardcore. No, you write a checklist on how it appears while constructing. Okay, so let me show you how this one is gonna work. So first of all, you're gonna have to clear a site. When you have to start construction, you will find your site looking like this. So what you have to do is to clear out everything so that you can start building. You cannot just come and start with digging the foundation and then you firstly have to clear your site. That is why on the checklist, the first thing you have to do site clearance so that your site can simply look like this, just like that. So after clearing your site, you have to now start digging. You're digging for what? The foundation that we are calculating right now. So when you have to dig, it's going to look like this. You see, now you're digging for your foundation so that you can start putting the concrete, you can start your foundation wall and everything and so on, right? So when it comes to the risk of collapse, you're calculating that when you have excavated, right, there is soil that's gonna be sitting around here, and then you see you have your trench looking like this, right? So what you're calculating the possibility or of how the soil might fall in, or how this part might break. I actually don't know how to explain it, but yes, like that. That is what you're going to be calculating on the risk of collapse, because it's obvious that when you have your soil here and you have heavy machinery working around, people working around as well, there's gonna be tiny bits of soil that's falling in, and the corners might end up collapsing. That is why sometimes they will also have supportive structures here to make sure that they're different, to make sure that the soil shouldn't collapse in the trench, because meaning you will have to redig and everything like that. So once you have dug your trench like this, you're gonna have to calculate the risk of water, meaning we have to keep the trench free from water. So we cannot start construction while there's water in there, hence we have to calculate the risk of water. So when you're done with calculating that, you now come to the concrete footing. Your concrete footing is gonna look something like this. So when you talk about concrete footing, we are talking about this. This is what the footing that is going to be needed to support your brick wall. So this concrete footing of yours, it's in meters cubed, because you will include the center line, simply that. I just say center line because why not? I've had people pronounce it that way. So your concrete footing has the length, has the height, and it also has the center line, right? We will discuss more of the center line. After you've layered your concrete slab, you will now then come to the brick wall. So your brick wall is going to be in meters squared, because you're calculating the height of the brick wall and the center line, if I'm not mistaken. Once you're done with calculating for your brick wall, you have to calculate what we call backfill. Remember that you excavated soil, which is right here, right? After that, you have to refill the soil in here. So we do know that okay, I have a question for you. Do you think that the soil that was excavated here is going to fit in here? So what you're going to do on backfill, right? You're going to calculate the space which the concrete and the foundation wall has occupied in this trench, and the amount. So you're going to calculate the amount of soil that's going to be needed on both sides. So it's in so as you can see, the brick wall is in meters squared, and then the backfill is going to be meters cubed. If I'm not mistaken, I will check that correct to be correct, right? So yes, on backfill, you're calculating the soil that's gonna be needed to refill up to this point. After that, when you have refilled your soil, let's say your soil is coming here, everything is okay now, you have refilled, right? You're going to calculate the cutaway, the soil that has been left out, because obviously not all of this soil is going to fit in here. So what you're going to do, you're going to calculate the cutaway. After doing the cutaway, you're gonna come to the hard core, you're gonna come to the DPC, you're also gonna come to the facings. Now let's get into it. But before we get into it, I want to make something out clear. Always remember that when you are taking off for a foundation, as well as others, right? But I will give a description for each. When you're writing a foundation, you should firstly start with a measuring list, which is known as the checklist as well, right? After that, you have to add 1.5 meter to each side of a building when you're calculating for the area. Or you should check the specifications, because specifications will always tell you what to do. Then you use collections to make the measuring process easier. So you can refer to your measuring list. Oh, okay, I've done site clearance, tick. I have done excavations, tick. Making the process much more easier. Just like that. So I feel like I've given you a good background on what you're going to start with when it comes to foundations. So let's get into it. We're gonna go to question paper of August 2022, question 1 and question 2, right? Question 1 was to take off this, and our question 2 was for abstract building and squaring. So I didn't write everything here, but I just wanted to clear something out, right? I will show you the question paper. It looked like this, and the specifications, the drawing looked like that, right? Like this. So I want to clear something out, right? You see, we have a drawing here, and they said it was, the wall here is 220. However, we have this another drawing, and the wall here is 330. When you're going to take off, you use this 330. You have to check how your foundation wall is, or your brick wall is. So if it's 220, yes, you're gonna use measurements of 220 when you are taking off, when you're doing the center line, right? And then when you are given 330, you will use 330, and so on and so on. So this is what I wanted to highlight. So this was 7,000, and then when we add this, it's also gonna give us 7,000, because on this other side they said 7,000, right? So I couldn't write it due to space, and I couldn't finish the whole specifications due to space. So now let's get into the calculations, or simply taking off. Okay, your paper is going to be looking something like this. When you write your test, I don't think they provide you with this. It's only provided in the examination. So it's going to be looking like this. It has column A, B, C, D, and same applies to this A, B, C, D. Okay, why is my phone not focusing? There you go. Column A has a different specification. Column B is for something else, column C it's for something else, column D is for something else. So here, this is where you write your descriptions, right? I will show you everything, what column A is for, column B is for, column C, and column D, right? So first thing first, like I said, you have to write your takeoff list or your measuring list, which is going to look something like this. We did it when we started the video. You can go back and check it out, and if you wrote it down, that's very good. But you don't write those meter squared, meter cubed, and everything, because that's what you have to know by heart. So I want to give you a tip. When we write the collections, everything, the examiner can say calculate, or they can say take off. So our lecturer instructed us that if the examiner said take off, you put everything in brackets. If they said take off the site clearance, meaning you're gonna put it in brackets. And then if they said calculate, it means you don't have to put the brackets. You can correct me if I am wrong. You can also do your own research. So let's get into our calculations. So first thing first, the very first thing that you have to calculate is the center line. If I didn't mention it back then, they are mentioning it now. First thing that you have to calculate is the center line. So this is how you calculate the center line. Okay, so this is what's gonna happen. Since we have we have 7,000 by 7,000 for the area, right? We're going to say 2 by 7,000, which is equal to 14,000 less 2 by 330. I believe I have mentioned why we're using 330. It is simply because our foundation wall is 330. It starts at 330 and then obviously it's going to decrease to, it's going to be reduced to 220. So you say 2 by 7,000, which is going to give you 14,000 less that 2 by 380, and you're going to get this. Now since we have 7,000 by 7,000, right, we're going to also repeat this again. So if we're having 7,000 by 4,000, we're going to say 4,000 by you're going to start with this one of 7,000. You're going to start with the length, right? 7,000 multiply by 2, and then you get this. And then you also do for the 4,000 one, 2 multiplied by 4,000, which is equal to 8,000. You less it, you subtract 660, and then you get your answer. When you get that answer, the two, add the two. So since we're going to have this, meaning we're going to have 13,340 plus 13,340, which is going to give us 26,680 millimeters, which is also known, or which has to be written like this: 26,68. You have to underline after each calculation to show that you are done with that calculation. So if you were to do this and then you come to site clearance but you did not underline, you are just simply showing us that you are continuing with your calculations, so it was going to affect you when you set to square. So let's get into let's check our takeoff list. What's the first thing again? The first thing was site clearance, so we're gonna do that. Remember what the instructions said. You should also revisit the specification, revisit your question, revisit your takeoff list to make sure that everything is in order. Follow the instructions. So right now we're going to do everything in order so that you can understand how it's really done, what is really done. Okay, now let's start with the site clearance. This is how my site clearance calculations look. You do the 7,000 by, and you add 3,000. So where am I getting this 3,000? We multiplied 1,5 meters, which was explained in the specifications. The specifications had said that okay, let me look for it. Okay, so the specifications had said you have to clear the site 1,5 meters beyond external walls. Sometimes they can say 2 meters beyond external walls. So if it's 2 meters, rather you're gonna write 2,000 millimeters. So since it was 1.5 meters, you're gonna write it's going to be 1500 millimeters. So you multiply it by 2 because we have two lengths. So this is for the length, this is for the length, this is for the width. Length, width, yes, length, breadth, yeah. So if it was 7,000 by 4,000, you're gonna start with the length of 7,000 plus 3,000, and then you go and then come to the 4,000 on 4,000 plus 3,000. Does it make sense? And then after getting your answers, you then convert them to this column. You write them like this. So what we did, I didn't just think of this. So the answer that you're going to get here, you divide it by 1,000. Sorry that I forgot to mention it here as well. So since you got 26,680 millimeters, you divide it by 1,000 so that you can get an answer here. So what you have to do, you do not just round off because you want to round off a number. No, you don't round off anything besides the hardcore. That's when we have to, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, yes, that's what you have to do, because our hardcore was given to be 75 millimeters. When you divide it by 1,000, it's going to be 0.075. So it can be converted to be 0.08. So for time purposes, let me write everything down, and then I will come and explain how everything goes down. There you go. I will explain each step. So I had explained for the side clearance. Now let me get to the excavation, right? So on excavation, you do this. You write the specification. You therefore do the height. Remember, we had a height of 850 from the ground level to the until the how do I say that, on top of the concrete footing, right? From the top of the concrete footing to the ground level, our height was 850, and then we add 230, which is the width or the height of the concrete footing. So 850 plus 230, it gave us 1080. So remember, for it to be on this okay, this is the dimension column, this is the dimension column, this is the squaring column. So for you to write everything on this dimension column, you have to divide it by 1,000, which is this, which gives us 1.08, and then we also write 0.65, which is the length of the, remember the length which was given on the specification, right, which was 650. So before I can continue, I want to tell you all the things that need the center line, right? So we have the excavation, risk of collapse, concrete footing, brickwork, and backfill. There are 5. So it's the excavation, risk of collapse, concrete footing, brickwork, and backfill. Those need the center line always. So another thing which I had forgotten to mention was to mention the page numbers. You have to include page numbers at the bottom. Page 1, this is page 2. This is going to be essential when you I think it's going to be essential when you abstract or bill or not squaring, but yeah, abstracting or billing. I think you have to give a reference where you got the calculations from. So excavation, we are done. Risk of collapse, remember it, we're gonna need the center line as well. So we write our center line 26,68. Remember our height that we got, the height of the trench was 1,08 meters. You also write it here. We're writing 2 because remember we have 2 sides. When we have dug out the trench, we have 2. We're going to calculate the risk of collapse of 2 sides, right? So we come to risk of water. Remember, we do not have a unit of measurement, so you just write item. Now coming to the concrete. Remember, you should write the descriptions, guys. Concrete, you should also write the heading so that you can make a person who's gonna see this to be aware what you're doing. Make sure that your calculations are not overcrowded. Make sure that the space, make sure that things are visible and you can read, right? So for the concrete, we have the center line. I feel like this one is obvious. You have the center line, you have the length of the concrete footing, and then the height of the concrete footing, which is something you have in your specification, the drawings in the specification, right? So after that, we come to our brick wall. On our brick wall, we're gonna write our descriptions. As you can see, 1.5 brick wall built in ordinary bricks in 1:3 cement mortar mix. This is some, I do not guess this is what was written in the specifications, right? Excuse me. You're gonna write 850, which was given there, plus 75. Sorry, 75 was given on a specification. This is the hardcore. So if you were to check properly your brick wall, right? Okay, let me show you. Okay, your brick wall starts from here. That's from here. I might have made a mistake somewhere here, but yeah, we have to add the 75 for the brick wall, and then that's when you're gonna get this number and you write it here. Remember, you do not have to convert it unless it is the 0,07 0,075 that I had spoken about. You don't convert it unless it's that. So you write your brick wall. Remember, brick wall is in meters squared. So yeah, remember I told you that you have to know everything by heart, whether it's meters squared or meters cubed, right? And then the backfill, you write your description, and then remember we had 650, right? So on the backfill, we are calculating the space that has been occupied by the things that are in there. Remember, the length of the trench was 650, right? And then you less it by 330, which is the thickness of the wall, and then you're gonna get 320. Remember, we have 2 sides that we had to backfill, that we had to fill in, right? So you divide it by 2 and you get your 160. And then we also need our height and our center line. Like I had said, backfill, we need the center line. So I think I had forgotten to mention, you multiply it by 2. This is the dimension column, this is the dimension column, and then this is the squaring column. You multiply it by 2 because we are dealing with 2 sides. Same applies to the risk of collapse. You multiply it by 2 because we're calculating for 2 sides. Is that clear? Okay, and then we have for the cutaway surplus material, we do for the concrete, and we also do for the brick wall. As you can see, I feel like this one is self-explanatory, it's visible. And then we come to the hardcore. Remember, after writing your calculations, you close. So coming to the hardcore filling to underside of surface bed, yada. You write your descriptions. You have to know them by heart. You have to know how to write them properly, right? So you firstly do the calculations for the length and then for the width. So I had to repeat 7,000 by 7,000 on the length, 7,000 on the width. Excuse my handwriting if it's not visible, and excuse my mistakes, right? So like I said on the previous on another example, that if you had a width of 4,000, you're going to do 4,000 and also 7,000. So you say 7,000 less 330. Did I do this correctly though? Hardcore. Yes, I think I did it correctly. And remember that our hardcore was given to be 75 millimeters. Remember the 75 I was telling you about, divided by 1,000, you get 0,075, and then you convert it to 0,08. And then you remember this answer. Okay, you got this answers when you did the calculations. Divided by 1,000, you get this. Okay, DPC. So for the DPC, it's in meters squared, right? Oh my goodness, I forgot to close this. Never do this mistake. After writing, you have to make sure, you have to check that everything has been written correctly. So on your DPC, you just only write the length and the width of the site that you've been given. So remember, our length is for 7,000, and then our width 7,000 as well. So if we had a different length and width, it would be 7,000 and 4,000, right? The example that I've been making all along. So the last one, we have facings. Extra over brickwork for facings. And then first of all, you have to calculate the height of your facings, which is 75 to 75 as the height of the DPC above ground level. And then the 150, I had forgotten what it was for, but yeah, you get it. Okay, and then you do 225, and then you also do the calculation for the length of the external perimeter. So I did 7,000 multiplied by 4 because 7,000, you could have said 7,000 multiplied by 2, which is 14,000, and then you also do 7,000 multiplied by 2, which is 14,000. But yes, if you had different calculations with a different length, you have to do it like that. 2 by 7,000, 2 by 4,000, you add, you get your number, right? So I just did 4 by 7,000 to save space and time. So you get 28,000. 28,000 divided by 1,000 is going to be 28, which is 28,00, which you see right there. And then for this one, you're going to have 0, that's not a 6. Sorry, that's not a 6. It's a 0,22. So now let's come to abstraction.
And I've heard of a love that comes once in a lifetime.